Hi folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about why Christianity is the only religion in the world that is lambasted, sneered at, where there's a very well-funded, organised, concerted campaign to denigrate and humiliate Christianity and God and Jesus. Why is that such a big thing? Why is it so concerted? Why is it so well funded? Why are media and Western governments and the globalist cabal generally, why do they all go along with this? So let's sort of have a little look at that. Now, I've looked at movies, particularly since the early 2000s, and particularly since 2008-9, where all the movies, TV shows, TV series where Christianity plays some sort of central role in the storyline, and in every single one of them, God is a black man. The angels are about 1/4 white, the rest are black. Asian, LGBTQ. Why is it that God is always a black man? Why is that? It seems like, the way you would look at that is, are they trying to rub sort of Christians' nose? And, like was it a humiliation thing? What is this exactly? For example, do they say that Moses was a black lesbian, for example? In regards to the Jewish religion, do they take Jewish icons and say that they're black lesbians or Asian lesbians or Asian homosexuals or something? Well, they don't. Do they say do depictions of the Prophet Muhammad and say that he's a black lesbian or Asian lesbian? Well, they don't. Why do they not go to all other religions and treat them with the same contempt that they treat Christianity? And it becomes apparent very quickly that only Christianity is treated with such sneering, disdain, and contempt. Why? And there is a deliberate, willful attempt to humiliate Christians. Look, we can sneer at you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And they seem to. You almost get the impression they get off on it now. So God is always a black man. The devil is always white and straight, by the way. Couldn't find a black lesbian devil or anything, but there you go. So the depiction of the Christianity and so on is very far from the Christianity that certainly I grew up with. Now, religion was compulsory at schools when certainly I was growing up. This includes government schools and certainly in private schools. But they stuck more to this idea of, the three wise men, the three kings during the birth of Jesus and this sort of stuff. The parables like the Good Samaritan and that he was without sin cast the first stone, all that sort of stuff. And some of which it's quite a good spiritual grounding, those sorts of things. Do you take it as religion, or do you take it as, did you see it in the wider context of spirituality? And then, you see it, I think, a little bit differently if you just treat it as religion. I wince a little bit when I see Christianity being sneered at and demeaned so willfully and so gleefully by those who do it. And not because I'm a practicing Christian. Like, I can't remember the last time I went to a church. I can't remember the last time I donated to some Christian charitable cause, that sort of thing. But I start nonetheless feel uncomfortable about it. But I try to take a broader view. All right, then, well, maybe they're doing this same thing to all the other religions, but they're not. Only Christianity is being singled out for this treatment. So that I think needs to be understood. So we can ask ourselves why. Now, one thing that the globalists are very good at is they'll only be tough on the best behaved people. The most responsible, upstanding people are the ones that they will control tightly. So, say in the case of divorce, it's men, and only men that must be controlled. Women, either not so much or not at all. It's men. Well, we have to control. We have to humiliate and grind men. So, okay, when it comes to sort of race issues, it's only white people that must be controlled. So if you're, a brown guy, you can go around, beating the shit out of police officers. Nothing will happen to you. But if you're a white person and you disagree with mass migration, you can go to prison. So only the white people are vigorously and rigorously policed. There's a recent case in Britain where some Arabic chick started cutting up priceless portraits of British politicians of more than 100 years ago. And the police, we don't know who it was. We can't find. We don't have the resources to, who cares? But if a white person, shouts outside an illegal alien free housing estate because aliens go home, then he can be arrested and thrown in prison. But you willfully damage property. We don't have the resources to do anything about that. So only white people must be controlled when it comes to race relations. And Christianity primarily, not exclusively, because you get the brown people in South America or something, but Christianity is primarily a white religion, or at least a light brown religion. If you look at, say, the Mediterranean, Italians, for example, some of them are quite swarthy, Spaniards and so on. But Christianity is primarily a white religion, and so when it comes to religion, only Christianity must be controlled, humiliated, crushed, and slapped around, sneered at, pissed on, shit on. Only Christianity. No other religion gets that treatment. So what's in common here? Well, men are the better behaved and the most responsible people. Generally, I'm sure there are exceptions when it comes to, say, divorce and those sort of things. And more likely to act responsibly and sensibly, not exclusively. Again, there'll be exceptions. When it comes to race relations, it's white people that will be the best behaved, the easiest to control because they're upstanding and law-abiding and believe in the institutions that have all been stolen from them, by the way. And then when it comes to Christianity, it's the Christians that will be the best behaved, the most sensible, the most reasonable, the most tolerant. So it's easy to control the most tolerant people. It's much harder to control those who are least controllable. And we see this manifesting across the entire globalist social re-engineering edifice. It's only the most responsible people that get policed, which is it's very easy for a 5'2" 100-pound policewoman to tell. To tell a 6'6" 300-pound muscled up dude, do this, do that, or I'll put you in cuffs, because the guy is already predisposed to good behaviour, reasonable behaviour, and to follow instructions and to believe in the institutions. So it's easy to control people like that. It's easy to lie to them and to cheat them and deceive them and to humiliate them. They'll sit there and take it quietly, but the others won't. So if you want to be disrespectful to the Prophet Muhammad, then you're going to have a lot of problems on your hands. There'll be marches in the street, there'll be outrage, there'll be all sorts of things. And then it's very expensive. Then you have to bring in the police. You've got to get tough. You've got to stick them in prison, and they don't care about that. They're not upstanding citizens. They don't care about the sort of things the rest of people. You can't threaten them in the same way. Same as black people in the hood in Baltimore or downtown Chicago. They live with death every day. 20, 30 of them get shot to death every weekend, shooting each other. So what are you going to threaten people like that? Well, they've got nothing. They've got no future. They can't even perceive a future. They don't have the mental capacity to do it. They're much more difficult to control. It's expensive to control, very expensive, very difficult, and you can't reach upon it. You can't arrest a few of them. That intimidates the others. With white people, you can do that. But with black people and Arabs and so on, you can't. killing a few, arresting a few. So they think, no, you won't stop them. Whereas white people will shrink back in horror. Oh no, I might go to prison for this. What would my wife think? What would my children think? What will my, very different. Whereas when the Arabic, the Islamist gets arrested, then he's now a professional certified victim. He's accomplishing, he's achieved victim status as the black person has. So very different way of managing. But we see this now. Who are the people doing it? Well, it's not hard to see. The people, the writers, the producers, the scripters, the directors, the program conceivers, the whole thing. Always, it's very, very common here. The names are Steinberg, Cohen, so those are the people continually who do this. Now they've got this maniacal desire to always put God is black. The devil's always a white Christian sort of dude, but and they insert as many gay, lesbian, other characters in there to the Christian sort of wider diaspora that they can stick in. The Christians are just silly, evil, stupid. They believe in imaginary friends and all this sort of stuff. Now they do this. They wouldn't dare say this about Islam, nor would any other group. I mean, if you did the same thing towards the Jewish religion, they'd be screaming, Hitler, Nazi, fascist, swastika, anti-Semitic. They'd be screaming from the rooftops. But they are allowed to do it to Christianity with absolute and utter impunity in the full, total support of the establishment and the taxpayers' pocketbook. So now there are there are a few outside of that. Just a few, say the LGBTQ, particularly the lesbian side, but gay as well, but particularly the lesbian thing. They said, well, Christianity won't accept us. Gay stuff is supposed to be sinful. Therefore, you hate us, we'll hate you back, and so you get that. You get that dynamic at play as well. So Christians are all portrayed as evil, murderous, low IQ brutes, not like the super enlightened LGBTQ angry lesbians. So, but there's a bit of that, but primarily the engine room of denigrating Christianity is Jewish. So we need to ask ourselves, why is that? Now, I guess it comes down to the simple facts here that the Christian, the wider Christian sort of kingdom, diaspora, call it what you will, all the places where the Jews want to be. We want to be in those places, and those places happen to be Christian. You don't see Jews going to the desert, out in the middle of nowhere in the desert. You don't see them going to Islamic countries and or Buddhist countries or Shintoism places. That they gravitate only to the white places that are Christian. Now that's where they want to be. That's where they want to go. And so it's not surprising that in proportion they've had more problems in Christian areas than they've had anywhere else, because those are the only places they want to be. And those also turn out to be the richest place. Now, if you're an outsider, you want to go to places that have, on a relative basis, the protections of the law and contract law and courts and elected representatives to government. You'd want to, because those places aren't perfect, but they'll give you the maximum level of protection on balance. Whereas, you can just be any other of these places. You could either not be allowed in business or to do anything at all, or a mob will turn up and just kill you all. So at least you want to be in the places that are the most orderly. So the Christian places happen to be also the most orderly and happen also to be the places where the Jews want to be. But there's also where, and particularly in Catholic religion, which is really the Jews' main sort of attack line, hasn't been the Catholicism has perceived Judaism as a direct competition. They're in direct competition for the flock, as it were, and so and the Jewish activists throughout history have sought to, in effect, usurp the, if you like, the power and influence of the church or the Catholic Church, and so they haven't been treated kindly by the church, and have at times been denied, business opportunities, or they've been fined heavily for some very creative type misdemeanors, or indeed evicted completely from one country or another. So now the Jews take the view, the activist Jews take the view, well, the only reason that happens is because they say we killed Jesus. And that's it, end of story. They say we killed Jesus, and therefore we're being treated shabbily like this. But that wasn't it. That's that's an absurdly simplistic take on things. So, and the final sort of, or most recent thing is that the Jews, the Jewish activist class, which is vast, and the Jewish schools, are very rigorous in teaching all the Jewish students how wicked and evil the Christians have been to them over the centuries. So, including, if you like, the Roman, the Romans, although the Romans, you could hardly call them Christian in the days of Pompey and so on. But the most recent thing was that Hitler was relatively tolerant of religion or Catholic religion, and he was brought up in Austria and Bavaria, which is primarily Catholic. So Hitler was reasonably tolerant of religion and the Catholics, but he would, had obviously little or no tolerance for Jews, and this is something that sticks in the Jewish craw, that effectively the Christians, or Christianity, the Catholicism, and Hitler sort of tolerated each other, and yet the Jews were singled out for harsh treatment, during that time. So the Jews take that it's a de facto condoning. This is the Catholic Church. It de facto condoned what happened to them, and thus they can never ever be forgiven for such, as the Jewish activists see it, such heinous acts. So, I mean, you do see the point. Secondly, when the Jews wanted to leave Germany, and the Nazis gave the Jews many years to say, look, we want you to leave. Go and find another place to go to. And put considerable resources at the disposal of the German Jewish citizens, who at the time would give or take about 400,000. About half of them did manage to go overseas, but find visas and find work and so on in the USA and whatever. But all the countries the Jews wanted to go to were Christian countries, and most of these countries said, no, we don't want any, unless you're like super well qualified or something. We don't want you. And the Jews therefore claimed that had these Christian countries all accepted the Jews in there, then no Holocaust would have occurred. And thus, because the Holocaust did occur, it is therefore, by extension, the fault of these Christian countries. And so the payback against Christianity and the desire to pay back, I think, is my view, of course, is extreme. So I would argue that the motivation and the sense of righteousness that we're doing the right thing, we're only punishing you guys for what you did. Now, but why, we could sort of turn that question and say, okay, why is it that you only wanted to go to the white Christian countries? Why didn't you want to go anywhere else? That's where all the money is. That's where the law is. We want to go to places where we can at least be protected by laws. And so, well, there you go then. So these evil Christian countries just happen to be the richest, the most orderly, and where in reality you'll be the most protected in the overall scheme of things. So when you denigrate and destroy Christianity with the relish that you're currently doing, remember that with it goes a lot of the order and the laws and the justice and the conscience of a nation. That also goes with it as well. And one day when you've got rid of all that, these people are going to turn around on you and you won't have anywhere to hide. So this is a fool's errand and you must stop it. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.